My name is Natalie Ashford, and my family put me in a mental institution to steal everything my father left me, not because I was a danger, not because I hurt anyone, but because they knew the truth. I was the only thing standing between them and $2.4 million. Before I tell you how I walked back into the home they stole from me calm, quiet, and fully in control, let me ask you this. Have you ever been so thoroughly erased that even your grief was labeled as madness? Because they didn't want me to heal. They wanted me gone. I was 32 when it happened. A week after I buried my father, my older brother Jason showed up at my door with a box of pastries and a fake smile. "Hey, Nat, you holding up okay?" I nodded. I was tired, raw, but okay. "Listen," he said, "Aunt Clara and I have been talking. We're worried about you. You've been through a lot. You need rest." I remember thinking, since when do you care about rest? He was always the suit and smile type. Only showed up for holidays, and even then, only for the photo ops. I told him I was fine. He said I needed professional support. Then the papers came. 2 men in white coats, soft voices, a van with tinted windows. They didn't force me, they tricked me. Said I just needed a few days. Observation. It was voluntary, they claimed. But the moment I stepped inside Westfield's Serenity Care, the doors locked behind me. And no one came to get me. Not after a week. Not after a month. Not after a year. Inside, everything was beige. Walls, floors, food, time. They called me sweet. They called me quiet. They called me non-compliant when I asked to leave. Jason filed for emergency guardianship 2 weeks after I was admitted. Said I was mentally unfit to manage finances. He told the court I was hallucinating. That I believed everyone was after me. That I had become paranoid and delusional following Dad's death. The court approved it. Just like that. The man who hadn't visited my father once during chemo was now signing away my rights. While I ate Jell-O and took mandatory group therapy, Jason and Clara took everything else. They cleaned out the Vermont property, liquidated the stocks, sold my father's antique car collection, rented the house on Airbnb. Every week, new strangers slept in the bedroom where I grew up. The room where my dad used to sit with me and talk about constellations. And me? I couldn't even call my lawyer, because Jason revoked my legal power of attorney. And they thought I'd just stay quiet, but I didn't, because they forgot something very important. I don't panic. I plan. My roommate was 79. Her name was Margaret. She was a retired psychiatric nurse. She noticed everything. After our second week sharing a room, she said, "You don't belong here, and I've seen people like them before." She started teaching me how the system worked. The medications, the behavior checklists, the keywords that made you look stable. And then I met Kevin. He cleaned the computer lab twice a week. 20 years old, in community college, hated how institutions treated patients. Also, brilliant with code. I told him my story. He believed me. Together, we set up email alerts for property sales, tracked my father's trust, logged into court databases. Every document Jason filed, I read it. Every asset he moved, I traced it. Every lie he told, I wrote it down. 18 months passed, and while they thought I was coloring in therapy, I was building my case. Then, something shifted. A new doctor rotated in. Dr. Aaron Wyatt. Younger, sharper, less programmed. Margaret whispered, "She's different. She listens." So I tried. I told her everything. Not dramatically, not desperately, just facts. I showed her the records Kevin helped me collect, the medical contradictions, the legal manipulations. She said she needed time. I gave her 3 weeks. Then one morning, she called me into her office and said, "I filed for a full review, and I'm going to testify on your behalf." And that was the moment everything changed. 4 weeks later, I stood in a courtroom. No beige walls, no trays of Jell-O, just me, my new attorney, Dr. Wyatt, and Jason. He looked surprised to see me, alive, alert, and very, very focused. The judge read the evidence, the financial timelines, the medical inconsistencies, the conflict of interest between Clara and the doctor who first admitted me. By the end of the day, my guardianship was revoked, and 2 months later, I walked into my father's house with a new deed, a sheriff's order, and Jason's jaw on the floor. Let me ask you, if the people who claim to be protecting you actually tried to erase you, would you come back louder or smarter? Tell me in the comments, because sometimes, the most dangerous revenge is the woman who says nothing until it's all hers again. and I just walked back into the home they stole from me only to find it full of strangers drinking wine in my living room. Before I tell you what happened the night reclaimed my father's house and how I handled 16 people partying in the space they thought was theirs, let me ask you this. Have you ever been so erased from your own life that even the key in your hand felt like a stranger's? It had been exactly 64 days since the judge reinstated my legal rights. I waited, planned, made sure every document was final, every signature dry. No surprises. I knew Jason wouldn't go quietly, but I didn't expect what I saw that night. It was a Friday. I arrived at 6:48 p.m. court order in hand. New keys, 2 witnesses, my lawyer and a deputy. We pulled up to the house. Lights on, music playing. Cars in the driveway. Not 1-8. My lawyer raised her eyebrows. The deputy reached for his belt. I stepped out slowly, walked to the front door. It was unlocked. Of course it was, because Jason wasn't here. Airbnb guests were. The moment I walked in, I froze. There were people everywhere. Shoes on the couch, wine bottles on the floor. Someone was filming a TikTok in the dining room. And in the hallway where my dad's oxygen tank used to sit, 2 guys were debating crypto. My lawyer stepped beside me. This is illegal occupancy. We can clear the house. But I held up a hand. Because I didn't want chaos. I wanted clarity. I stepped into the center of the room and said, "Hi, my name is Natalie. This is my house." Someone laughed. A girl in gold hoops. "Yeah, sure. We rented this place for the weekend. You're the owner?" "I am." "Funny. Jason's name is on the listing." My jaw tightened. Not because I was angry, because I was ready. I pulled the paper from my folder and read aloud. By order of the state of Massachusetts, legal ownership of 227 Pinewood Drive is hereby restored to Natalie Ashford. All unauthorized tenants must vacate within 30 minutes or face formal trespassing charges. Silence. Silence. The music was still playing. I walked over to the speaker and turned it off. Now they were listening. It didn't get violent, but it got messy. One guy swore at me. Another girl asked if she could finish her wine before leaving. The TikTok kid asked if he could just get one more shot on the staircase. I said no, but I said it nicely. Because power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a woman holding the deed with steady hands. Within the hour, they were gone. One car scratched the edge of the driveway. Another left behind a champagne cork under the couch. But I didn't care, because I was home. And the door was finally closed on them, on Jason, on the lie. I walked through every room, opened drawers, ran my fingers along the walls. They had moved everything. The painting above the fireplace gone. Dad's record player, sold. The only thing untouched, his old desk. And inside, one thing I hadn't expected. A letter. Not from Jason. From Dad. Dated 6 months before he died. If you're reading this, it means something went wrong. I tried to believe in family, but you always saw things clearly. I hope this house still feels like home. And if it doesn't, make it yours again. You're not just my daughter. You're the only one who listened. I sat on the floor and cried. Not because I was broken, because I was finally allowed to feel something in my own house. Let me ask you, if strangers lived in the space built for your grief, would you clear them out with rage or with truth? Tell me in the comments. Because sometimes the real revenge. And I just found out what strangers were saying about me while I was locked away. Not to my face, not to the courts, but in Airbnb reviews. Before I tell you what I found hidden between 5-star ratings and photos of my living room on someone else's profile and how those words helped me rebuild the truth, let me ask you this. Have you ever read a stranger's version of your life and realized they knew more than your own family ever admitted? Because Jason didn't just steal my house, he made it a product, and my absence became the brand. It started the morning after the house was cleared. The silence was new. No monitors beeping, no medication rounds, just real, heavy silence. I opened my laptop, connected to the Wi-Fi, and the network name was still Ashford Ben Guest. I stared at it, not because it surprised me, but because they didn't even bother to change it. Jason had been hosting people in my father's home under a fake ownership profile, so I searched Airbnb. There it was, historic suburban retreat hosted by Jake 1977. My brother was never good at hiding in plain sight. The listing had been up for over a year. Photos I didn't recognize, new bedding, updated kitchen, candle holders Clara had stolen from the Vermont house. And the caption, a family-owned home with deep history and warmth. We believe in keeping the past alive while building new memories. It was disgusting. But what got me wasn't the photos. It was the reviews. Dozens of them, from strangers, each one a clue, each one an accidental confession. Absolutely stunning space. Host was responsive and polite. We even got a bottle of wine left by Clara, lovely woman. Monica. July 2023. I froze. Clara, she'd stayed here long enough to leave wine, long enough to be remembered. She wasn't just part of the theft, she lived in it. Beautiful home but strange energy. Found an old oxygen tank in the closet. Made us feel like we were in someone else's space. Almost too personal. Lauren, April 2023. I knew that tank. I put it there. It was the one we used the week before Dad passed. Jason never bothered to clear it, because it didn't mean anything to him. To me, it was the sound of my father breathing. Super cozy. Host told us the house was left to him by a distant aunt. Has a sad but sweet vibe. Loved it. Elliot, December 2022. Aunt? He lied, not just to the court, but to hundreds of people. He rewrote the story for profit, and they believed him. But the worst? The one that cut the deepest? Nice stay. But we saw a weird note taped inside a drawer. Something like Natalie's meds, do not forget. Made us wonder if this place was abandoned by someone unstable. Mira, May 2023. I remembered that note. Margaret wrote it for me before I left for the hospital. Just in case. Jason must have packed it with my belongings and left it in the drawer. They found it and assumed I was unstable, because that's what the reviews were really doing. Not just rating the house, but rating me. Even though they'd never met me, I printed every single review, highlighted names, dates, patterns. Some guests stayed twice. Some mentioned Clara by name. One even described a small backyard party in June the same month. Jason told the court I was deeply deteriorated and non-functional. They threw parties while I couldn't even get toothpaste without permission. And then I found it. One review, no rating, no name, just a message. If you're reading this, and this is your house, I hope you come back. Something about this place feels taken. If you're Natalie, they erased you. I just wanted to say I noticed. It was anonymous, but it shattered me, because someone saw it, someone felt it, the wrongness, the theft, the absence, and they left a trace, not for Jason, not for the court, for me. I printed that one twice, framed it, put it on my desk, because it was the first time I realized I hadn't disappeared. I'd just been written out, and now I was writing myself back in. Let me ask you, if strangers walked through the ruins of your life and left behind stories, would you be brave enough to read them, and strong enough to reclaim what they thought no one missed? Tell me in the comments. Because sometimes the real testimony isn't in court, it's in the footprints they thought would fade, and the woman who followed every one of them home. And I just found a photo of my aunt smiling in the dining room of my stolen home, sitting next to a woman who once told me I was too emotional for leadership. Before I tell you what I did when I realized Clara's house parties weren't just social, but strategic, let me ask you this. Have you ever realized that your downfall wasn't just orchestrated? It was catered? Because my family didn't just lock me away. They threw parties on top of the rubble and invited my enemies to drink the wine. It started with a search, not out of curiosity, out of obsession. After I found the Airbnb reviews, I wanted more. Details, evidence, patterns. Jason and Clara had underestimated me. Again, and nothing makes me more focused than being underestimated. So I searched her Facebook. Of course it was private, but her best friend's account wasn't. Gwentrelibels 72 had no privacy settings and no common sense. I found a photo album titled Clara's Garden Sawyer, June 17th. The cover photo? My backyard, my chairs, my garden, my stolen hydrangeas, and Clara with a wine glass and her fake pearl necklace smiling like she owned oxygen. I clicked through slowly. Most faces were unfamiliar. Old women in flowy scarves, men in pastel button-downs, one girl in a tennis skirt and heels. But then I saw her, Heather Connolly, my former manager, VP of Strategic Operations at Calyx Capital, the woman who, 5 years ago, told me in a performance review, "You're brilliant, but your energy makes people nervous." The same woman who passed me over for promotion 3 times, who hosted leadership retreats where I wasn't invited because I didn't vibe with the team, and there she was, holding a mimosa in my father's chair. I dropped my mouse, stared at the screen. The party wasn't just for socializing, it was for networking. Clara turned my home into a power lunch playground. While I was locked in a room being evaluated for coherence, she was passing hors d'oeuvres to the people who tried to shrink me into silence. The rage didn't come all at once. It came slowly, through my chest, into my jaw, like my body was remembering how much it had been forced to hold back. I wasn't crazy. I was erased with intention. I needed proof. Real, public, time-stamped proof. So I reverse searched the image. Found Heather's LinkedIn. She'd posted a throwback in July. Lovely summer evening at Clara's, some of the most honest and inspiring women I've met. Grateful for connections that feel like home. She tagged Clara. Clara liked the post. No shame, no caution. And the caption? Feel like home. It was my home, my grief, my ghost, dressed up as ambience. I called my lawyer, told her everything. She said, if we can prove she used the property for profit or leverage outside the Airbnb agreement, we may have something stronger. I already had it. Heather's post, Clara's name, the guest list. I started building a spreadsheet. Faces, connections, positions. One of them worked for a local paper. Another was married to a zoning commissioner. My family wasn't just stealing. They were expanding their network with stolen space. No one questioned it, because power covers everything with a smile, until someone wipes the smile off. 3 nights later, I drove past Heather's office. Lights off, but I waited. At 7:32, she exited. Alone. I didn't follow, didn't confront. I sent an email the next morning. Subject: about Clara's party. Hi Heather. I came across a post of yours. Interesting to see you in my backyard during a time when I was institutionalized against my will. I'm reaching out not with threats but with facts. You helped validate the unlawful occupancy of a home stripped from its rightful owner. I'm giving you 48 hours to remove all related social media content and submit a written statement confirming who invited you and for what purpose. If you don't, I will file a formal complaint with your board, your PR firm, and your largest client. Sincerely, Natalie Ashford. She responded 3 hours later. Natalie, I had no idea about your situation. I was told the home was Clara's personal property. Please let me know how I can correct this. I'm deeply sorry. It wasn't an apology, but it was leverage, and I was collecting. Let me ask you, if you found out the people who ruined your life used your pain as party decor, would you crash the party? Or quietly dismantle the guest list one name at a time? Tell me in the comments. Because sometimes revenge isn't a scream, it's an RSVP, with your signature at the bottom. My name is Natalie Ashford, and the day I unlocked my father's secret account was the day I realized he never trusted them either. Before I tell you how a single PDF file gave me the leverage I needed to blow apart Jason and Clara's lie, and how a hidden financial trail revealed a second betrayal I never saw coming, let me ask you this. Have you ever found out someone was protecting you long after they were gone and you didn't even know you needed protection? Because I thought I'd been left alone. But my father left a door open, and Jason left his fingerprints all over the lock. It started with a drawer. Third one down, left side. The one with rusted handles and sticky wood. I was clearing out my dad's old desk, touching everything slowly like it could still talk. That's when I found it. A plain white envelope, sealed with masking tape. No label, just one line in my father's writing. Ask Richard, only if necessary. Richard, Dad's accountant, old school, meticulous, suspicious of banks and people alike. I hadn't spoken to him since the reading of the will. He looked like he hated everyone in the room, which, in hindsight, might have included Jason and Clara. I opened the envelope. Inside, a flash drive. No label, no password, just one file, Ashford Polaris 04, PDF. I opened it on a backup laptop, and what I saw nearly made me fall off my chair. It was a financial statement. Polaris Growth Partners, a private equity firm I'd never heard of. But the heading said, account holder Alan Ashford, beneficiary Natalie Ashford Est. Value, $419,372.89. I read it 3 times. Then I read the restrictions. Release only upon death of account holder. Early withdrawal locked unless authorized personally by Natalie Ashford. No third-party access. No automatic distribution. No probate linkage. It was a fortress, built to protect one thing, me. I called Polaris immediately. They verified my ID, cross-checked the court order reinstating my legal rights. Within 48 hours, I had access. The account had sat untouched for 18 months earning interest, compounding. It was now just over $442,000. More than I expected. More than Jason ever guessed existed. And attached, a scanned note, handwritten by Dad. Natalie, this is your clean slate. Not for comfort, not for survival, for fire. If you're reading this, it means you've already walked through flames. Use this to build something that can't be taken from you. Dad, I cried. I cried, not because I was sad, because I was seen, finally, without manipulation, without conditions. He knew, and he'd planned for it. Then I called Richard. He answered with a tired voice. I was wondering when you'd call. Ellen said you'd figure it out eventually. I asked him what else he knew. He asked me how much I wanted to know. Everything, I said. So he opened the folder labeled Clara Liability. In it, a promissory note from 2016. Clara had borrowed $24,000 from Dad, claiming it was for medical expenses, a repayment schedule she never followed. Emails begging for extensions, none of which she fulfilled. And one curious document, a joint declaration between Clara and Jason, saying in the event of Alan Ashford's incapacity, we agree to jointly advise on all estate matters. It wasn't notarized, but it was dated 3 days before Dad entered hospice. Jason had lied about when Dad lost cognitive clarity, which meant his court documents were filed with intentional misinformation. And that was fraud. Richard hesitated, then said, almost like a confession, he didn't want you to know how little he trusted them. But he knew you'd figure it out. He left enough trails. You were always the one who finished the puzzles. I thanked him, hung up, and made a list. Not of people, of weapons, legal, digital, factual. Because revenge doesn't always look like screaming in someone's face. Sometimes it looks like opening the right file at the right time and pressing send. I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer, brought her the flash drive, the emails, the repayment history. She sat back in her chair and said, they're not just guilty of civil overreach. There may be criminal liability here. Misrepresentation of mental health for financial gain. Fabrication of legal status. This is bigger than a guardianship abuse case. I asked her one question. If I pursue this, will it be public? She nodded. Do you want it to be? I didn't answer, because that part didn't matter yet. The important thing, I had options, and for the first time in 2 years, they didn't. Let me ask you, if someone left you a secret map, one that led to power they never got to use, would you follow it? Even if it meant burning everything that hurt you down to the ground? Tell me in the comments. Because sometimes the loudest justice is money they didn't know you had, and the silence that follows is entirely yours. And the day I unlocked my father's secret account was the day I realized he never trusted them either. Before I tell you how a single PDF file gave me the leverage I needed to blow apart Jason and Clara's lie, and how a hidden financial trail revealed a second betrayal I never saw coming, let me ask you this. Have you ever found out someone was protecting you long after they were gone and you didn't even know you needed protection? Because I thought I'd been left alone, but my father left a door open, and Jason left his fingerprints all over the lock. It started with a drawer, third one down, left side, the one with rusted handles and sticky wood. I was clearing out my dad's old desk, touching everything slowly like it could still talk. That's when I found it. A plain white envelope, sealed with masking tape, no label, just one line in my father's writing. Ask Richard, only if necessary. Richard, Dad's accountant, old school, meticulous, suspicious of banks and people alike. I hadn't spoken to him since the reading of the will. He looked like he hated everyone in the room, which, in hindsight, might have included Jason and Clara. I opened the envelope. Inside, a flash drive. No label, no password, just one file, Ashford Polaris 04, PDF. I opened it on a backup laptop, and what I saw nearly made me fall off my chair. It was a financial statement. Polaris Growth Partners, a private equity firm I'd never heard of, but the heading said, account holder, Alan Ashford, beneficiary, Natalie Ashford Est. Value, $419,372.89. I read it 3 times. Then I read the restrictions. Release only upon death of account holder. Early withdrawal locked unless authorized personally by Natalie Ashford. No third-party access. No automatic distribution. No probate linkage. It was a fortress, built to protect one thing, me. I called Polaris immediately. They verified my ID, cross-checked the court order reinstating my legal rights. Within 48 hours, I had access. The account had sat untouched for 18 months earning interest, compounding. It was now just over $442,000, more than I expected, more than Jason ever guessed existed. And attached, a scanned note, handwritten by Dad. Natalie, this is your clean slate, not for comfort, not for survival, for fire. If you're reading this, it means you've already walked through flames. Use this to build something that can't be taken from you. Dad, I cried. Not because I was sad, because I was seen, finally, without manipulation, without conditions. He knew, and he'd planned for it. Then I called Richard. He answered with a tired voice. I was wondering when you'd call. Ellen said you'd figure it out eventually. I asked him what else he knew. He asked me how much I wanted to know. Everything, I said. So he opened the folder labeled Clara Liability. In it, a promissory note from 2016. Clara had borrowed $24,000 from Dad, claiming it was for medical expenses, a repayment schedule she never followed. Emails begging for extensions, none of which she fulfilled. And one curious document, a joint declaration between Clara and Jason saying in the event of Alan Ashford's incapacity, we agree to jointly advise on all estate matters. It wasn't notarized, but it was dated 3 days before Dad entered hospice. Jason had lied about when Dad lost cognitive clarity, which meant his court documents were filed with intentional misinformation. And that was fraud. Richard hesitated, then said, almost like a confession, he didn't want you to know how little he trusted them. But he knew you'd figure it out. He left enough trails. You were always the one who finished the puzzles. I thanked him, hung up, and made a list, not of people, of weapons, legal, digital, factual, because revenge doesn't always look like screaming in someone's face. Sometimes it looks like opening the right file at the right time and pressing send. I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer, brought her the flash drive, the emails, the repayment history. She sat back in her chair and said, they're not just guilty of civil overreach. There may be criminal liability here, misrepresentation of mental health for financial gain, fabrication of legal status. This is bigger than a guardianship abuse case. I asked her one question. If I pursue this, will it be public? She nodded. Do you want it to be? I didn't answer, because that part didn't matter yet. The important thing, I had options, and for the first time in 2 years, they didn't. Let me ask you, if someone left you a secret map, one that led to power they never got to use, would you follow it? Even if it meant burning everything that hurt you down to the ground? Tell me in the comments. Because sometimes the loudest justice is money they didn't know you had, and the silence that follows is entirely yours. Jason thought no one would ever look that closely. He figured once he won, the paperwork would just collect dust like everything else he didn't earn. But when I flipped through the court documents he submitted to take guardianship over me, one signature on page 6 stood out, because it wasn't just out of place. It was impossible. It was Sienna, my attorney, who spotted it first. Natalie, there's a notarized statement here allegedly signed by your father 2 days before his formal mental competency ruling. That would mean he signed something after the court ruled he was incapable of doing so, which wasn't just a procedural error, it was a criminal one. I looked at the scan. The document was titled, Statement of Intent for Durable Power of Attorney Transfer from Alan Ashford to Jason Ashford, dated May 11, 2023. The problem? My father was admitted to Westfield General on May 9. His neurological specialist, a man who had treated him for 2 years, declared on the 10th that my dad had no remaining capacity to consent to legal action. He couldn't hold a spoon. He couldn't remember the year. He definitely couldn't sign his name in perfect, even penmanship on a dotted line, no less. But there it was, Alan's signature, looking like it was written by someone with a steady hand and a clear conscience. It wasn't his. I knew it in my bones. Jason had forged my father's name to claim power over me, and no one questioned it because Jason was a lawyer, a calm, reasonable, successful man who just wanted to help his sister through a difficult time. But now, he'd be a lawyer without a license. I called Sienna the same night. How airtight is this? She didn't hesitate. With a handwriting analyst? Very. With medical records confirming your father's incapacity at the time of the signature? Legally bulletproof. We contacted the firm that had managed my father's trust and asked for a sample signature from his last legitimate check. The difference was undeniable. The way he curved his F, the pressure on the pen, the natural tremor. Jason had copied the shape, but not the struggle. Sienna filed a complaint with the Massachusetts Bar Association. Fraud, forgery, abuse of legal authority, all tied to Jason's name, bar number, and firm. Then I did something Jason didn't expect. I emailed his boss, not with threats, with documents, all of them, chronological, clean, professional, no gotcha, no rage, just the truth, the kind that can't be denied. I got a call the next morning, unknown number, downtown area code. Miss Ashford, this is Ellen Dre from Penbridge Law. Jason Ashford is no longer with our firm. As of today, if you require a formal statement, our legal department is available. That was all. No denial, no defense, just exit. But it didn't stop there. 3 hours later, I got a message from an email address I hadn't seen in 2 years. Melanie Ashford at Jason's wife. Subject line: I didn't know he did that. Inside, 3 paragraphs. Natalie, I knew Jason was fighting for guardianship. I knew he felt you were unstable. That's what he told me. But I didn't know he forged your dad's signature. I didn't know he falsified dates. I didn't know you were actually locked away. I'm so sorry. Attached to the email, their prenup, signed, dated, and witnessed by Jason on May 12, 2023, the day after the forged document. It wasn't illegal, but it proved intent. Jason had signed that prenup knowing what he'd already done, knowing he was now the legal controller of my father's estate, knowing that Melanie would never touch a cent if things went wrong. He protected himself from his own wife. I sat with that for a while, not because I was unsure what to do, because I'd never realized how far he was willing to go, not just to win, but to never be questioned. He didn't just forge a signature, he rewrote a life. I replied to Melanie's email, short, thank you for the documents. I believe they'll help. I'm sorry he lied to you too. She didn't write back, but 3 days later, her Facebook status changed to separated, and I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumph. I felt exactly nothing. Because justice isn't supposed to feel like a celebration, it just feels correct. Let me ask you, if someone built your prison with a pen, would you use paper to bring theirs down or walk away while the walls fall on their own? Tell me in the comments. Because sometimes the strongest revenge is one clean signature, just not the one they forged. Clara always seemed untouchable, the polished one, the woman with matching scarves, practiced laughs, and the kind of composure people mistake for dignity. But you don't stay that calm unless you've rehearsed being caught before. And as it turns out, she had. Because what Jason and Clara did to me, Clara had done once before, to someone else, long before I ever imagined she'd do it to me. It started with a message request on Facebook, not from a stranger, but from a name buried in my childhood. Irene Keller. I remembered her vaguely. Sharp eyes, long skirts. The neighbor who used to bring over lemon bars during the holidays. She moved away before I turned 15. Now, out of nowhere, her message read, Natalie, I heard about what happened with your dad. I'm sorry. This might seem strange, but I need to talk to you. It's about Clara. I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to open that box. But curiosity isn't always a weakness. Sometimes it's the rope you use to pull yourself out. So I said yes. We met at a small cafe off Main Street. Neutral ground. Quiet enough to hear the truth when it came out. She recognized me instantly. You look just like your mother. I nodded. She didn't waste time. I read the local story online about your case. And when I saw Claire's name, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. She reached into her purse, pulled out an old folder, frayed edges, documents that smelled like forgotten corners. In 1998, Clara was the power of attorney for her older sister, Marianne. I blinked. I didn't even know Clara had a sister. She did. Not many people do. Irene opened the folder. Letters, bank statements, court records. Marianne had early onset dementia, diagnosed at 53. Within a year, Clara had sold her home, said it was to pay for care, but she kept half the money in an account under her own name. I looked at the transaction logs. Tens of thousands shifted over 5 months. Same patterns, same silence. By the time Marianne's son realized, it was too late. The will had been changed. Clara got everything. What happened to the son? He tried to fight it, but he didn't have proof. And Clara, Clara always looks put together. That line stuck with me. She always looks put together. That's the thing with people like Clara. They don't panic. They present. Because they know image buys trust. And trust lets them rewrite the truth. I thanked Irene. She gave me a copy of everything. I don't want money, she said. I just want someone to finally call her what she is. Not a thief, not a villain, but something worse. A repeat offender in pearls. I went home and laid out both cases. Side by side, Marianne's and mine, 2 decades apart, same financial misdirection, same timing 6 to 12 months after a health crisis, same fake family concern, and one name in common on every document, Clara Spencer. I brought it to Sienna. She didn't even flinch. This is gold. Can we use it? Not in court, not directly. It's too old. But in negotiation? Absolutely. This proves pattern. And judges don't like patterns when they're this specific. We drafted a letter. Formal, professional, not a threat, a timeline. The last line read, if Clara Spencer refuses mediation regarding financial restitution, the plaintiff will consider releasing archived case documentation to the press for purposes of journalistic investigation regarding guardianship abuse patterns. Translation: settle, or be named. Again, Clara responded in for days, not with a denial, but with a lawyer and an offer. Restitution totaling $178,000, a formal apology statement, and a permanent surrender of all estate influence. It wasn't everything, but it was control. I had finally taken the wheel. I didn't feel satisfied, not in the way revenge stories often promise. I didn't pop champagne, didn't gloat, didn't post. I just stood at the window of the house they tried to erase me from, holding documents that proved I had never been crazy. I had been correct. And finally someone else had to sit with that. Let me ask you, if someone who hurt you had done it before to someone else, would you become their mirror or their consequence? Tell me in the comments. Because sometimes justice doesn't knock, it returns, with names, dates, and copies. And one very calm woman, who kept the receipts. People assume lawyers don't make mistakes, but they do. And when they do, they bury them in footnotes, paper clips, or locked drawers. Except this time, one lawyer's mistake opened a vault Jason and Clara thought they'd already emptied. It started with a voicemail from a man named Douglas Yates. He introduced himself like he was still holding a cigar. Miss Ashford, this is Douglas Yates. I handled part of your father's estate, under the second trust name Polaris Capital, if that rings a bell. I was going through archive files for tax purposes and came across something I'm obligated to disclose. Give me a call. Polaris? I'd already accessed my account with Polaris Growth. Was there another? I called him that afternoon. His voice was clipped, formal, not defensive but aware. Miss Ashford, during your father's early estate planning years, he created a temporary custodial holding account for liquidity offset during family transitions. I blinked. I'm sorry, during what? Divorces, deaths, care shifts. It was a financial buffer. Most people forget to close them. Your father didn't. He refiled it under a different beneficiary. That word hit hard. Wait, beneficiary? Yes. Initially it was your mother. Then, after the divorce, it was assigned to you. I didn't even know this account existed. Neither did Clara. Neither did Jason. And the balance? $62,000, Yates said, plus 14 years of passive interest. My breath caught. Not because of the amount, but because it proved something else. My father trusted me when no one else even checked. I asked for access. Yates paused. There's a small issue. I filed a partial amendment in 2019 but forgot to finalize the transfer authorization. Legally, I can't release it until you provide your father's original digital signature, or an affidavit confirming his intent. This was the mistake, a clerical one. Fixable, but slow, because intent is slippery when the person is no longer alive to confirm it. So I asked the only person who might have seen it documented, Richard, my dad's accountant. I met him in person this time. Small office, wood panel walls, coffee that had been sitting too long. He pulled a thin brown folder from a locked drawer. I thought I might hear from you again. Inside, a letter, dated August 2019, scanned, signed, simple, Douglas. If anything happens to me, Natalie is to access the custodial offset directly. No delays, no reassignments. You know why. Alan, it wasn't just a legal note. It was a command. I sent the scan to Yates. He didn't argue. By Friday, I had full access, $62,000 untouched. Until now, I didn't use it, not yet. Because this wasn't about spending, it was about strategy. I opened a new account in a separate bank, transferred everything quietly, locked it behind two-factor encryption, and labeled it simply, Clean Fire, because that's what it was. No inheritance drama, no Clara fingerprints, no Jason lies. Just what my father meant to leave me and did. Because even when he doubted himself, he never doubted me. That night, I walked around the house, room by room, kitchen, study, back hallway. I stood in the pantry where Clara used to store her wine bottles, the ones she insisted were only for guests. I ran my fingers along the shelf, and they thought they were erasing me, but what they were really doing was proving me right. Let me ask you, if you found something that wasn't just a gift but proof that someone once fought for your future in silence, would you spend it or protect it the way they protected you? Tell me in the comments, because sometimes the money isn't the revenge, it's the memory, still growing interest, still waiting for the moment you finally realize you were never forgotten. It was a cousin who sent it to me, a screenshot, no message, just a headline circled in red. Alan Ashford, beloved father and mentor, dies at 71, published in the Westfield Herald, June 18, 2023. I blinked. The byline said submitted by family. I started reading. Paragraph 1, his career, his military service, the company he built. Paragraph 2, his hobbies, gardening, model trains, jazz piano. Paragraph 3, survived by his son, Jason Ashford, and sister, Clara Spencer. That's where it stopped. No mention of me, not by name, not by role, not even as a relative. I stared at it for 10 minutes, like my eyes would eventually pull my name out of the white space. But it wasn't there, because they never wanted it to be. I called the Herald, asked for the editor. I was polite, measured. Hi, I'm calling about an obituary that ran in June. For Alan Ashford. Yes, I remember. That was submitted by a Jason Ashford. He's my brother. A pause. I see. And I wasn't listed at all. The editor's voice softened. Do you want to submit an amendment? I took a breath. No, I want to submit a correction. And then I want to submit the truth. I sat at my desk that night, opened a blank document, typed the headline, what they didn't print in my father's obituary, and I began writing, not as revenge, but as restoration. My name is Natalie Ashford. I am Alan Ashford's daughter. He did not survive me. I survived without him for 18 months while my name was erased from our family, and eventually from his death notice. But I was there. When he couldn't walk, I carried him. When he couldn't speak, I understood him. When he couldn't remember who I was, I stayed anyway. And when he died, I signed the forms. Not Jason, not Clara, me. I was there when his eyes closed. And I'm still here now for the part they didn't want you to read. Then I told the truth. How Jason locked me away. How Clara spent the inheritance. How they kept me out of the obituary to seal the story. But stories aren't sealed. They're rewritten. And this is my version. My father wasn't perfect, but he never stopped protecting me. And I will not let the record show anything less. I submitted it the next morning. The paper declined to publish. Too personal, they said. Too non-traditional. So I posted it myself. On Medium, on Reddit, on LinkedIn, on every platform with my name on it. And within 48 hours, it had 11,000 views. Strangers commented, "You're the real story. They tried to bury more than a man. Thank you for writing this." Someone even said, "This isn't an obituary. This is a resurrection." Jason sent me an email. 2 sentences. "Take it down. You're embarrassing us." I replied with one. Then next time, include my name. Clara never wrote. But a week later, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside, a silver necklace. The one I'd given my dad for Father's Day 5 years ago. I didn't wear it. I hung it in the front hallway. Visible, permanent, mine. Let me ask you, if someone erased your name from your own family's ending, would you shout it back into the record? Or write a whole new story from scratch? Tell me in the comments. Because sometimes the real obituary isn't what they publish. It's what you survive to rewrite. I wasn't looking for anything. Just sorting through my father's old wallet. A small brown leather fold, the kind worn at the edges, full of expired library cards, clipped coupons, a faded emergency contact list. Then, tucked behind a gas receipt from 2009, a business card. Evelyn Marlowe, VP of Strategy and Partnerships, Calyx Capital. I stopped breathing. Because Evelyn Marlowe was the woman who'd once told me I wasn't marketable. The same woman who'd watched me work 12-hour days in silence. Who smiled while giving my promotion to someone less qualified. Who said, "Natalie, you're talented but you don't sell yourself." And I believed her. So I quit. The card had a handwritten note on the back. "Call me Ray. Natalie, promising, steady. Ask about her project doc." Dated July 16, 2020. 3 weeks before I left the company. I stared at that line. Ask about her project doc. It wasn't a dismissal. It was a recommendation, a signal, and I had never seen it. Because my father never told me. I dug through my files, pulled out the old project proposal, the one Evelyn rejected. Market trajectory analysis for ethical venture models. I opened the PDF, scrolled to the last page, and saw something I had never noticed. Reviewed internally by E. Marlowe, not declined, not dismissed, just reviewed, which meant she had seen it, saved it, maybe, sent it. I Googled her. She was no longer with Calyx, now managing partner at Kellenbridge Capital. And her LinkedIn status? Seeking strategic research leads for ethical growth partnerships. The same words I had written in the project doc 3 years ago. I hesitated, not because I was scared, because I didn't want to believe I might have been wrong. That Evelyn wasn't the villain. That maybe someone else, maybe Jason, maybe HR, maybe just the silent bias of a boardroom had cut my legs while she had tried to open a door. I sent an email. Subject: a familiar name, a forgotten document. Attached: the card, the project file, a simple note. You may not remember me, but I think my father kept something meant for me, and I think you may have once tried to help. If I'm right, I'd like a chance to finish what I started. She responded, in 18 minutes. Natalie, I remember you. You left right before I was preparing to pull you into a cross-department project. Your idea was strong, and so were your instincts. You were overlooked, but not by me. I'd love to reconnect. Schedule something? I did. 2 days later. Zoom. AM. She looked exactly the same but softer. I'm sorry you never saw that note. I'm sorry I assumed you didn't believe in me. We talked for over an hour, not just about what went wrong but about what could still go right. She offered me a consulting role, light at first, then long-term if we clicked. And we did, because she didn't forget me, and I finally stopped forgetting myself. That night, I framed the card, not as a trophy, as a reminder. Sometimes people do believe in you, they're just buried under the noise of the ones who don't. Let me ask you, if you found a name from your past, someone you thought dismissed you, and learned they tried to lift you up instead, would you hold the grudge or take the hand? Tell me in the comments, because sometimes the most powerful revenge is getting exactly what you deserved all along. From someone who never stopped seeing it. Jason picked the restaurant. Of course he did. Classy, quiet, one of those places where the napkins are heavier than the bread. Clara insisted we all be civil, as if civility was ever what I lacked. Melanie came too. She hadn't spoken to Jason in a week but said she wanted to be present. Not for him, for the truth. They were already seated when I arrived. Jason in a pressed navy suit. Clara in her pearls, always the pearls. Melanie wore gray, minimal makeup, no smile. The hostess led me to the table. I sat at the head. No one questioned it. Jason cleared his throat first. Natalie, thanks for coming. We thought it might be time to talk things through. I didn't speak. Not yet. Let them fill the silence they used to weaponize against me. Clara jumped in. We know mistakes were made. Emotions ran high. But all this has gone far enough, hasn't it? I looked at her directly. Far enough for who? She blinked. Jason reached for his water. You've made your point, he said. You've embarrassed us. But we're still family. There it was. That word, family, always used like a leash. I opened my folder, slid a copy of the legal settlement across the table, one for each of them. Jason read it faster than Clara. His jaw clenched at Clause 6b. Any and all future estate proceedings shall require the approval and signature of Natalie Ashford as primary legal representative. He looked up. You're taking control? I smiled. I'm taking back what you stole. And you're lucky I'm not pressing criminal charges for the forgery. Clara paled. Melanie just kept looking at me. I've read the full report, she said quietly. Everything you went through, the court documents, the false diagnoses. You weren't just erased, Natalie. You were erased with precision. Jason turned to her. Are you serious right now? She didn't answer. She was already looking at me. He told me you were unstable. He needed me to be unstable, I said, so he could control everything I had left. The waiter came by. I ordered tea, nothing else. I wasn't there to eat. I was there to end something. Clara finally spoke again. I'm sorry. I never wanted it to get this bad. You didn't think it would, I replied. Because you thought I wouldn't come back. She flinched. That was all I needed. This isn't a reconciliation, I continued. This is a closing statement. I am no longer asking for a place at this table. I built my own. And this dinner? It's your invitation to step down from a legacy you mishandled. Jason folded his copy of the settlement. And what if we refuse? Then the lawsuit reopens. The press gets the second part. And the Bar Association sees what I haven't sent yet. I leaned in slightly. This is me being merciful. Silence. Clara nodded. We'll sign. Melanie looked down at her hands. He's going to lose everything, she whispered. He already did, I said. I left the restaurant without finishing my tea. They stayed behind, probably for dessert. But nothing tastes good when you're eating consequences. Let me ask you, if the table they locked you out of suddenly had your name on the place cards, would you sit down or tear it down? Tell me in the comments. Because sometimes revenge isn't fire. It's legal clarity, served cold, in writing, at a table they thought you'd never return to. The house was finally quiet, not empty, just quiet. No more legal letters, no more courtroom meetings, no more voices trying to rewrite my name into an afterthought. Only boxes, labeled, stacked, closed. It was time to leave, but something stopped me at the study door. A draft, the smallest shift of air. I turned toward the bookshelf, the one with the loose panel Dad always meant to fix but never did. Something was wedged inside, a white envelope, worn at the corners. My name on the front, Natalie. I sat down at the desk, opened it slowly. Inside, 2 pages, folded, creased with time. The handwriting was familiar. Dad's still slightly shaky, but deliberate. Natalie, I don't know when you'll find this. Maybe I'm still here. Maybe I'm not. Maybe you found this by accident, or maybe I left it poorly hidden on purpose. I wanted to write this before I forgot how. There are things I should have said sooner, like, I knew you were carrying more than anyone ever saw. I saw it. The long nights, the quiet strength, the way you stayed when others left. I always meant to make it up to you. But life doesn't come with warning labels or timelines, just people, trying, failing, loving badly. I hope by the time you read this, you're free. Not from pain that doesn't just vanish, but from the part of you that kept asking, did anyone see me? I did. I see you still. Love, Dad. I didn't cry. Not the way people expect. There were no sobs, no gasps, just a quiet exhale. Like my lungs had been holding a truth I wasn't allowed to believe until now. He knew, through all of it, the silence, the confusion, the legal chaos, he still saw me. And maybe that was enough. I took one last walk through the house, stopped in each room, touched the walls I used to lean against when grief felt heavier than gravity. I left behind the court files, the old tea mugs, a single photograph on the mantel. Not for nostalgia, for proof that I had been here, that I didn't vanish, that I left on my own terms. At the door, I turned around, held the letter one last time, whispered, you weren't perfect, Dad, but you gave me the one thing no one else did, a voice. Then I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, and didn't look back. A week later, I mailed a copy of the letter to Jason. No note, no return address, just the envelope, sealed, like a truth he couldn't rewrite. Clara never got one, not because I hated her, because she would have ignored it. Some people don't deserve closure, just distance. And me? I started again. New apartment, new job. Evelyn's offer turned into a full-time role. New name on the mailbox, Dr. Natalie Ashford. Because I finished the degree they tried to convince me I didn't need. Because healing isn't a story arc. It's 1,000 small, deliberate choices. And I made them all, quietly, steadily, on my terms. Let me ask you, if you found one last letter from someone who once let you down but always saw you, would you hold on to it? Or let it go? Tell me in the comments. Because sometimes closure doesn't mean forgetting. It just means you finally get to leave with your name spelled right.